Hello, as Simo said, I'm Arto Klami. I'm associate professor of computer science from University of Helsinki, and also work in this Finnish Center for Artificial Intelligence. And I'm talking today about a concept called virtual laboratories. And the basic idea is that, there's a lot of opportunities for AI and machine learning and various techniques in process industry, simply because things are becoming more and more digital. I'm not going to talk about any particular instances in this industries, in part because I am not personally working on any applications of AI in process industry, but rather I'm talking about on a slightly higher level that about the bigger transformation of how can we, the human experts that are kind of driving these complex high-level decisions on how do you build processes, how do you run your factory, and so on, how can we work together with AI? And in particular, I'm kind of addressing these questions of what is needed so that we can make this transformation, and how can you ensure that us, the AI researchers, will actually do the work for you, so that we will solve the right problems for you, not just some generic AI problems that are of no interest for you. So I'm talking really about AI assistance, which means that there is a human that is trying to solve complex tasks, often, tasks of varying complexity. So it may be a relatively simple thing that you're an operator that needs to tune the system a bit, and you would go and want to ask from an AI system of what should I roughly do, but you're still in control. You're the one who does the changes. Or we may be talking about kind of an extremely complex process, kind of your core expertise of how do we create a complicated procedure where we are manufacturing some particular materials or so on, which is, of course, a process that takes years or decades to design, and it involves a lot of people. And what I'm arguing is that this is actually where the biggest potential of AI is. It's not in the small predictive models and whatnot. It is somewhere in an AI helping us to solve the most important, the most complex problems. We are not there yet, but I claim that everyone will need to get there at some point. And of course, there's a lot of challenges on this path. So maybe the main thing is that it relates to all use of AI, which is that having digitalized the environment, having some digital twins of the assets or processes, or having sensors that measure the system, that's just data acquisition. That's just an easier way of experimenting with things. That's not enough. It's an enabler, but the core question is that how do we use these assets? And I would argue that most of the AI technologies that are currently being investigated are related to kind of this relatively simple prediction, control, monitoring type of tasks. And even for those cases, there's a significant effort in creating the solution. So you need to do kind of a hand-on development that may take years. It may be a research project to start looking into a simple thing. And the big thing is that most of the things that we end up doing are outdated almost from the beginning. They're not relying on the latest techniques. And if you would, even if there is a new AI technique coming out soonish, there's a new project that is needed to integrate it into these things. And then if we think about these high-level processes of designing a whole, let's say, a factory, it's actually quite poorly formalized, and it relies heavily on individual expertise of the individual people designing it. These are kind of major bottlenecks on bringing AI to these high-level questions. But an important observation here is that actually there's nothing on this slide that relates to process industry. And the main claim is that we cannot and should not solve any of these problems within a particular industry. Rather, we need general solutions on how AI can be plugged in to any kind of complex design problems. For this purpose, we've introduced the concept of a virtual laboratory. So it's based on the basic observation that even though the facilities where we work with and the in kind of ways we conduct experiments, they have changed a lot. We do things in much more digital way. We use simulators and so on. But the designer or researcher is still working in the same way as before. They have some hypotheses, they conduct some experiments, they observe what happens, and then they iteratively improve their design using their own subjective knowledge of the processes. And this is actually very similar across lots of industries and lots of disciplines. Our vision is that we would want to do AI assistance for the R&D process itself in a manner that is more or less independent of what's the problem that we're trying to solve. And it's not just a high-level concept, it's a concrete practical tool that we are building. So virtual laboratory is essentially a way of integrating all kinds of possible digital twins or digital realizations of the parts of the process into a joint entity. So we may have digital twins of measurement devices or assets. We may have computer simulations of processes. And that's an important element that we are bringing here is that we will also have digital twins of the human experts, not some robots that autonomously operate there, but rather computational models of what the expert or the designer is trying to achieve, what are their capabilities and so on. And this is an integral part of a laboratory. It's the active agent there. All these things are required so that we can actually start thinking about how can AI help us in solving these problems. I put there on the bottom a link to a paper that introduced this basic concept. It's like a vision paper that talks about these basic ideas. At the FCAI, we are actively working on this basic concept on multiple fronts. So it's actually a very big research. It's not a research project, it's a research direction for the whole center. We're working on concrete software that is there or will be there to kind of actually help establishing a virtual laboratory in a particular domain that can incorporate the AI assistance. We're doing cutting-edge research on the basic fundamentals of what does it mean to work with AI to solve these kind of complex design problems. And we are already establishing examples of these virtual laboratories, from climate research to material design, mobility, all kind of autonomous mobility applications to the city design, drug design. So we are making this, it's not a high-level talk, even though I cannot go to the details here. So I'm talking about the first two elements briefly in this talk. I'm not going to introduce the existing virtual laboratories because they're not on the kind of process industries. So first of all, the concrete software. So we've established a library called YLabs, Virtual AI Labs. That is still in relatively early stages, but there is a link to the page. I put contact address for the main developers. There's other people working on that, of course, as well. And this is really the platform that would be used for incorporating AI assistance to any digital R&D environment. And the important thing here is that we are not saying, let's destroy everything you built, let's start from scratch, but we're building on the current digital twins and domain-specific models that you already have. So this is just a platform that it incorporates, it combines whatever digital elements there exist, and we focus on bringing on the left-hand side. So what is the AI assistance that can be brought into any domain? Here's one concrete example. So this is a design problem for optimizing durability of solar panels. So it's a recent research project where the research group is constructing better crystals for building the solar panels, and then has a measurement technique for rapidly testing how durable they are. And the important thing is that this research process itself can be described as some sort of a flow chart. So you do a physical experimentation, you do image capture and so on, and then there is some AI element that helps the designer choose what should I try next. And the interesting thing is that we can take this kind of a description of a research process, we can map it to the software that we're developing. So we can just say that let's run this system on top of our software. And the important thing then here is that once we look at some particular element of this process, that is about the AI design, about an AI element here, it's going to be fairly easy to replace that with a new element that is possibly developed by someone else, an external AI researcher who just wanted to look at this particular question here. And once your system is running on top of our software, you just change, but let's use this new algorithm. So the benefits, I'll just quickly summarize on why it would be useful for you to run your systems on top of this software. So the basic goal, of course, is to improve the R&D efficiency and quality by bringing in the AI assistants and making the whole R&D process a bit more systematic and reproducible. And the key improvement in terms of cost and efficiency is that whenever someone invents a new AI technology that is better than the previous ones, it's like an hour of an effort switching in the use of that. But maybe the main thing here is that I argue that this is the only way of being able to engage the AI community to actually dedicate their resources on solving problems that matter for you. So as AI researchers, we are constantly looking for challenging and interesting problems where that if we manage to do a nice solution, we get high impact demonstrations and applications for that. And this is actually hard. So if I want to contribute to a process industry application, I need to start a new collaborative project and I need to dedicate significant part of my career to that. But if we can turn the tables so that there is an easy way for me as a more or less independent AI researcher to look at an isolated part of this complex system, get excited about it, create a solution, and then I have an easy way of demonstrating that this had an impact. This had an impact on improving waste management in process industry. Then I'm happy. And there is much considerable earlier examples of that this kind of an effort has changed how a particular field works. Maybe best exemplified by the so-called Netflix Prize, which originally around 15 years ago kickstarted the whole movement of recommender engine research, and is now more or less the basis of the multi-billion industry of ad recommendation or kind of television program recommendation. It's a huge industry, and it exists because the AI people pretty much, it was made easy for them to create solutions for these problems. Finally, if I've given a very, very quick overview on what we do in terms of the research directions here, it's just kind of simplified example. So this is a design process in the simplest possible form. There is a user who wants to achieve something, cannot really specify exactly what, and it builds on their own domain knowledge. And then there is the world or the simulator of a world where you can make changes and observe, did things get better or worse? When we talk about AI assistance, we're bringing in a third element here. We're bringing an AI model that explicitly models what the user is trying to do, how they're trying to do it, and tries to understand both the user and the world. So how does the process itself work and how does the user work? And we're doing a lot of research on parallel aspects on this, building on, for example, on the concept of computational rationality as a way of modeling the user's capabilities and constraints. We're building on cognitive science theories on understanding how people work, and building on reinforcement learning models. That's kind of a data-driven way of taking some shortcuts here without trying to fully understand what the human is doing. So we get examples like this. So there is a user who's trying to make a design, and then there is an AI that just observes what the user is doing, tries to model what they are doing, and then builds on this to make suggestions on what to do. So to conclude, the virtual laboratories, I gave a very high-level overview of this concept that exists to make it easy, or at least easier, to incorporate AI assistance for the hardest problems that you want to solve. We started working on the software that doesn't intend to replace anything that you have, but it comes as an additional layer to combine any digital assets that you may have and makes it easier to take into use AI solutions developed by others. And the important thing is that it encourages us, the AI researchers, to work on problems that actually matter for you. We're doing a lot of research on that in FCAI. I put here again the link to the high-level overview paper introducing the concept. And finally, my most important message for you as the process industry representatives is that this is intended as a general tool for any R&D process. It certainly does not match perfectly all possible R&D processes and industries today. We are still working on it. We can change that, but we of course need your help. So we need to start looking into that. What are the interesting opportunities for virtual laboratories in your cases, in your industries, and how do we need to continue developing the software so that it matches those? So thanks. That's all I have to say, and the floor is for Simo.